Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. I'm your host Terry, coming to you from eastbound I-8090 in mile marker 90, so eastbound 8090 at mile marker 90 in Indiana. This is the Craig Rest area. It's like right by Elkhart. I think the Elkhart exit's like 2 miles up the road. Anyway, just made it here, man. I had to drive to Abbotsford, Wisconsin this morning, pick up this load. So I basically ran my clock down to nothing. I had to go by our terminal yesterday, which was kind of unplanned. And so that put me behind on my pickup, which was a drop and hook. And I don't know, I've gone to Abbotsford, to Abbeyland in the past when I was at Prime. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. So a little housekeeping. I am dropping this load in Pennsylvania in the morning, and then I'm going home. And what I'm planning to do while I'm home, among other things, is start getting t-shirts, Tim Travels t-shirts done up. And I think the first order is going to be because people are asking for like a 50-50 blend with a pocket. So I've got both the neon yellow and I think I picked like a royal blue to start. So not quite as dark, not a navy blue, but a little bit, actually almost like the color of the truck here. For no other reason than just to mix it up. And I'll figure out how that design goes. It might be, I don't know. I mean, I might like just put the little, because I have this thing that's just Tim Travels and it's got the little YouTube logo. And I might do that above the pocket and then put the Tim Travels round logo that you've seen on the back. If anybody's got a strong feeling about that, let me know. Or I could just put a Tim Travels logo over here. I don't know. But then I'll just work that out with my screen printer guy. And we'll get the t-shirts ordered. Because it's still, I mean, it is August 2nd, but I feel like it's still going to be warm for a while. Who knows? There might be a blizzard in, October in New York or whatever, but that's my plan. So, couple of things. I'm always curious about why things are called certain things, how towns got their names. And, you may have noticed, as I have, that there are a lot of towns in America with the name Mount Vernon. And all I want to mention about that is that pretty much every town in America that's named Mount Vernon, just like every town in America that's named Washington, is named after George Washington. Every town in America named Mount Vernon is named after Mount Vernon, George Washington's home in Virginia. And the reason that happened is because once a town was named Washington, people still wanted to honor the first president, and so they would often name areas after his home, Mount Vernon. In fact, in Baltimore, there's the original in Baltimore City. It's on Charles Street. It's because it sits right in the middle of the street. The street actually goes around it, but there is the Washington Monument, and that neighborhood in Baltimore City is called Mount Vernon because the Washington Monument is there. And that's the original Washington Monument. That was there. It's not nearly as big as the obelisk that's in Washington, D.C., but it was there before. It was the first one. So anyway, and the reason I mentioned that all these towns, all these neighborhoods, all these things are named after George Washington's home is because that home was largely built by slaves. So next time you're in a town called Mount Vernon, just remember that that town, yeah, it's named after George Washington's house. Like, that's the reason it got that name. But remember that it's named after a house that was largely built by slaves. I say largely because there were also artisans, carpenters, people like that. But the vast majority of the labor, including probably clearing the timber and making the boards and everything, was done by slaves. So just think about that, you know, when you're in that town. Okay, so in the past, people have said, why would you quit being a lawyer to be a truck driver? Like, you can't change careers. And I've explained fairly in detail how being a lawyer sucks a lot of times. And also that how much money you make is not going to drive how happy you are. But here's the other reality of the law. There's a lot of legal jobs, especially if you're just starting out as a lawyer, that don't pay jack. And here's a perfect example. I just happen to be on Indeed for the Baltimore area where I live, because I don't think it's a secret. I'm looking for jobs outside of trucking as well as in trucking. And you know, I don't know what I'm going to do, because but I am getting ready to start a graduate course. But anyway, I just happened to, because my resume's on Indeed, right? They send me all sorts of like law firm stuff. And this one came up in my feed, and Westminster, Maryland is the county seat for the county I live in. But take a look at this. Like you can't make this up. So that law firm, and I don't really know anybody at that law firm. You know, I don't think it's some huge, big-ish law firm. But think about this. They're offering $55,000 to $70,000. And what do you think, unless you're like some stellar attorney, like, you know, they're not going to be on the high end of that range. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put 55. But here's the other crazy thing about that number. And this is how bad, I think this is like it's kind of a reflection of what the U.S. labor market has been like for years. In 2022, so by this time, 22 years ago, I had already sat for the bar exam, and I wasn't licensed yet, but I was basically working as a lawyer. I wasn't like going to court because I couldn't. I wasn't like, you know, the client-facing person, but I was, you know, doing briefs, making, you know, research and stuff, doing lawyer stuff, right? And I was making $65,000 a year, 22 years ago, because I graduated in 2002, May of 2002. So think about that. I was making basically right in the middle of that range, but really on the 2/3. You know, I was making $65,000 to start at a really small place. Like, it was just me and one other lawyer, and we were kind of doing like some ad hoc stuff, and he also had some other business interests. But that just gives you an idea of how like stagnant wages are. At the top firms, yeah, wages have gone up, but I actually have had much bigger pay increases in trucking, because when I came into trucking 5 years ago and change, like when I first got solo at night, I was making 36 cents a mile, 36. Then after I got 30,000 miles under my belt, I got this huge pay increase to 40 cents a mile. Well, you know, think about that. I make 62 cents a mile right now. And I'm still not happy with that, because I just don't think, because I don't run enough. I mean, if I was running the miles I ran at night, I probably would be happy. But I don't know that if I stayed at night this whole time, that I would have been up to a base of 62 cents a mile. But what I'm saying is job hopping in trucking pays off sometimes. Okay, so one of the things, and I kind of segue into this, right? One of the things that always kind of irks me about like safety departments at trucking companies is that they always act like me as an individual truck driver, you as an individual truck driver should be like super concerned about their CSA score, about the company's CSA score. Now on the margins, it probably does matter a little bit because in theory, you get pulled into weigh stations more if your company has a crappy CSA score. But now here's the interesting thing about the company I work at now. We don't have pre-pass or DriveWise. The company's policy is, and I actually at first I was like, oh, that's weird. But now I think it's probably a good idea. The company says, hey, if you want, pre-pass, you have to pay for half of it. The company will pay for the other half. But it's so rare I'll go days and days and days, weeks maybe, without pulling into a weigh station because oftentimes they're just closed. And so even the weigh stations that are open, I'm like, I'll pull into them. A lot of time, I do scale more at this company because we don't have the little scales on the trailer. This load, 33,000 pounds. I didn't get on a scale. I do have a thing on the dash that tells me how much, what my air pressure is, and I've kind of started to figure out what I'm looking for depending on the weight in air pressure on the drives. So anyway, I touch on that because it really seems to me that, well, let me start by saying this. When I was a kid, I always paid attention to what men said. I mean, I paid attention to my mom because she'd hit me with a wooden spoon or something. And I paid attention to other people's moms because their moms might call my mom on a landline, of course, and then my mom would hit me with a wooden spoon. So, but that was the reasoning behind it. But with men, I was just always interested in what men were doing. That's why I've told, that I knew so many people that have been in, like all the adult men I knew, practically all the adult men I knew as a kid had been in the military. And one of the other things that I paid attention to is what they did for work and what they talked about, because people talk about their work. And one of the things that I always remember is when, sorry, I'm going to turn this down just a bit. One of the things I always remember is that, sorry, I just noticed a water leak right here. That men would often say stuff like, man, Tony's got it made. He's got a union job. He's set for life. Or you'd hear somebody be like, yeah, Jim's making bank. That machine shop he works at is union, so they get really good pay and stuff. And what that meant was it wasn't a commentary on how great labor unions were per se, but it was more a commentary about that these men had jobs that were valuable. Like, they didn't want to lose those jobs. Why? Because they got paid well. They had great benefits. They had worker protections and job security. And they had something to look forward to at the end, a pension. And in some cases, health care for life. A lot of unions had that. And so, it was like, it wasn't that they necessarily loved their job or their company or their boss, but they valued it. They valued it. And they stuck around and they did their best by and large because that job meant a lot to them. It was basically their present and their future that was at stake. And the thing is that those companies, a lot of times people would be like, oh, I'd like to work at such and such a place, and somebody else would be like, well, you're gonna have to wait for somebody to die because they're not hiring, or there's a hiring freeze, or they only hire a few people every year. You gotta know somebody to get in there. But anyway, it was, again, that value of that job, right? You were waiting for somebody to die or to retire or whatever. And a lot of times it was nepotism, right? People were like, yeah, my dad was in the union, my dad was in the plumbers union or the pipe fitters union, and I got into this company because, he called some people he knew. There was that aspect to it. But why did people, want somebody to make phone calls? Because it was valuable. So contrast that and compare it with trucking industry. Now, there are union jobs in trucking, but how many truckers actually value their jobs to the point that they are willing to basically do what's necessary to keep the job? And what I mean by that is that I've been at several trucking companies, and I've always said that if you don't have any CSA points and you don't have any tickets and you don't put trucks in the ditch, you don't have, you don't have a load of beef rotting in your trailer because you forgot to fill up the reefer with fuel, stuff like that, you don't, and maybe abandoned trucks. I mean, we all know that there's like this list, but most of us know that you can pretty much quit a company and move to another company. And like I said, I've done that for basically increase my wages. But no company I've been at did I ever look at it and go, man, I got to stick around till I can retire from this place because they got killer benefits. I got a shop steward that has my back. There's always more work than I can stand, blah, 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 right? Like, no one says that about most, especially OTR companies. Almost no one says that. And if you think about it, isn't that part of the reason, the fact that no one says that, the fact that no one really thinks that the job they're at is so valuable that they can't possibly imagine making a mistake or doing something stupid? When I look at CSA scores, or when I hear about CSA scores, I say to myself, maybe if people valued the job they had more, they would have less tickets, less accidents, less problems, because they saw something at the end. They knew that if they stuck around with that company for 25 years, they were going to have a pension. Or instead of being at a company, the one I'm at now, where you get a 2% match that vests after 5 years on a 401k plan that you're paying the costs of the plan as a plan participant, right? In other words, yeah, you should have a savings account. There's no pension. There are no guarantees. I don't even know what the medical care costs. I can't even imagine. I'm so lucky that I've never had to, not in my entire life, have I ever uttered the words, how much does that medical plan cost? It's just never, ever been something I had to worry about. But, and there were a lot of union guys back in the day when I was a kid, 50 years ago, 55 years ago, that was the same thing with them. They're like, hey, if I get in this company, I'm golden. I'm set for life. But again, you can bet they didn't show up for work late. They, always did their job. They always met the requirements. If it said wear a hard hat, they had a hard hat on. If it said wear this kind of vest, they had that kind of vest on. They didn't take chances with their job because losing it would be a disaster. But I don't think losing a trucking company job is a disaster. In fact, I think there's a lot of people that lose trucking company jobs or just say screw it and ditch their truck somewhere. And they're like, I don't even care if I come back to this industry. That's how little this industry matters to them. It was just a job. Maybe it paid better than working second shift supervisor at Wendy's, but it still wasn't worth it for the brain damage, for all the stress and struggle that you go through being over the road. And I just think, I look at like September's coming up, right? What's September? It's Trucker Appreciation Week is going to occur in September. And Trucker Appreciation Week is just, to me, validation that trucking companies are acknowledging that they don't do jack for truckers the rest of the time. And I tell you, I got a little bit spoiled at Prime because Prime at least has nice terminals. Knight had decent terminals, but not Prime. Prime is the gold standard, as far as I know, is the gold standard in terminals. The only problem with Prime is they only have 3 terminals. I mean, they have Manuka, but it's not at the level of the 3, main ones. But I did get a little bit spoiled in that regard because the terminals at my current company, they're just like, they're not quite as bad as the terminals were at J&R Schugel, but they're still embarrassing. If I owned the company, I would be embarrassed. But then again, I'm pretty sure that the people that own the company haven't even been to all of the terminals. So they just don't care. And that's the thing. When a driver understands how little the people that work in the buildings care about them, that's about how much that driver is going to care about that CSA score that belongs to the company. I mean, honestly, there are 50, 100 things that I could do that would hurt the company's CSA score that anybody outside the trucking industry would be like, yeah, I don't even know what that means. It means nothing. Because it's not like I was like, did a workplace shooting and people are like, oh, I get that. You can't work at our office. You can't work at our bakery. You can't work at our factory. No, the trucking industry is pretty unique. And, one of the things that's always talked about is retention. But I think that if these companies would just treat truckers better, they would have so much better retention. I mean, U.S. Express, before they got taken over by KNX, they used to say that it was costing them about 0.6 of a bip, right? So 0.6 of a basis point. A basis point is 1%. So 0.6 of 1% of OR, of operating ratio, 0.6 of 1% of operating ratio was, degraded because they had such horrible retention. But do you think anybody at that company, all these guys making millions and millions of dollars a year, ever said, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat drivers like crap. Maybe we should show drivers that sticking around here and doing a good job is going to be lucrative for them in the long term. And show them that at 25 years of service, there's going to be something there for them, even if they can't save anything right now. Because a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck, even when they're making good money, even when they're making more than that $55,000 a year that they want to pay that lawyer. Okay? There are a lot of people that are making $80 a year and they're paycheck to paycheck for whatever reason. They got 2 ex-wives. They're making payments on their Harley and on their German Shepherd purebred that they bought, and they're just living paycheck to paycheck. But if you said to them, hey, look, you know, there's something here at the end for you, and you know, we have good benefits and stuff like that. I mean, it could go a long way. And people that value what they have and what they will have, oftentimes they're going to be more careful. They're going to be more conscientious. They're going to be more company men than most of us are now. And it doesn't matter if you like your company, right? You can like a place but not see a future there. Like I said with the guys when I was young, maybe they didn't love where they worked, but they saw a future there. And, you know, I was telling somebody that I grew up outside of Rochester, New York, and there were so many union jobs. But even companies like Eastman Kodak, which did not have a union, had great benefits. I mean, I could go for hours talking about how awesome Kodak was back in the day, because my dad worked there, my mom worked there, my uncle worked there. I knew so many people that worked at Kodak when I was a kid, and they had it great. And you know, the thing is that these trucking companies could save in the long run. In the long run, they could save so much money by cutting down on improving retention, improving driver performance by just being better employers. Make that job valuable. There are a few trucking companies where you call them up and they're like, yeah, we're not hiring right now. You know, we don't need any drivers. I would be willing to bet that some of those companies are the ones that take the best care of drivers and have the best retention. And keep this in mind, you could go to any company and find somebody that's been there 35 years. But that doesn't mean that that company really takes care of drivers. It just means that particular guy has just never gone anywhere. Maybe he's like, oh, I got a job, I don't need to look for anything better. And he's happy. But think about it, and you know, like, and when it comes to Driver Appreciation Week, I'm starting to look at Driver Appreciation Week like what happened when people were enslaved in this country. So you may not know, but slaveholders would typically, the week between Christmas and New Year's, they would give the slaves off. Slaves really didn't need to do much. The domestic ones probably so, but the field workers, they just had to do their basic chores and then they were off for the day. And the other thing that would happen then is that the slave owners would provide copious amounts of alcohol to the slaves, and they would encourage them to drink. And oftentimes slave owners from different plantations would bet, they would bet each other about who slaves would do like the craziest stuff in horse races and who slaves could drink the most. And people would stay liquored up for like the whole week. And the idea that the slaveholders had was they can blow off steam and we could show them that, we do care about them. Now, Frederick Douglass said he never partook in any alcohol during that time, and that when he didn't do that, the slaveholders and overseers, were mad at him for not doing that. But he saw it for what it was. And so I'm not telling you to like smack the bagel out of somebody's hand during Trucker Appreciation Week, but just remember what it stands for. It stands for the least amount is they could do nothing. But really, it's almost like it's nothing. It's a reminder that 51 other weeks of the year, there is no appreciation. And actually, other than like when Prime would give Prime points and you could buy some stuff at the store, there isn't even any appreciation. Because let's be honest, we're out here to make money. We're not out here to get, some granola bars at a shipper. I could buy my own granola bars. You want to show appreciation? Give me 500 extra bucks that week. And, maybe that would help retention. I don't know. But I do think that this, you know, this industry, there's not a lot of loyalty from companies, which means there's not going to be a lot of loyalty from employees. And I don't have any loyalty to any company's CSA score. I have not ever contributed, but to somebody's CSA score going up. But it, you know, I guess I wouldn't worry about it if I did. I'd worry about my own job maybe, but not my company's CSA score. That's your problem, company. And so anyway, I encourage you to look at your situation. If there's a better place to land. And by the way, I think the market is kind of picking up, although truckload, man, the reporting coming from the quarterly reports, still not great, but might be, things might be picking up. Well, hopefully they will. If they do, that means that job hopping is going to be a more lucrative pursuit, and maybe it's time to start looking and brushing up your resume or your 10th Street account or whatever. So anyway, I will talk to you soon. Bye.